Hi, Analisa Six here with Lady of Leisure and the Sober Curator to give you the 2023 April horoscope for the zodiac sign of Leo for sun and rising placements. Hello, Leos. It's all about us now. Here we go. Talking about it. I have no idea what I'm going to say. I have no idea what we're about to embark on for April. I'm just going to get right into it. All right. So today is April 8th. So we're already in April a little bit further than what I would have liked to be in. I usually record these at the end of the month for the following month, and I have not been feeling well, and so I waited as long as I possibly could to do these, and now this is like the tiny little window I have to do them in before the month is over already. So I apologize, but I'm gonna talk about how the month started, and then we're just gonna get right into kind of where we're at. So every April, we're in Aries season. It's the cardinal fire sign. It's spring. It's a time of year that is really positive for fire signs because it's a fire energy. Fire likes fire. And so Aries and Leo tend to get along really well. A lot of my friends have birthdays right now. Happy birthday, April Aries. You're some of my favorite people. My husband's birthday is tomorrow, so that's a little bit why I'm discombobulated too, because we're getting ready for all that. So we have starting out in April, we had Mercury, Jupiter, and Vesta, the Sun, and Chiron all in the cardinal fire sign of Aries. And the area that's hitting in the chart for the Leo horoscope is the area that Sagittarius traditionally rules, that has to do with our belief systems, education, higher education, travel, long distance travel, other cultures. I feel like when these types of transits are happening in this area, it's really common for us to want to travel, or it's common for us to want to expand our knowledge in some way or learn something new or to teach something. So if we've been in an academic program and we're in a position where we're ready to disseminate our knowledge, that's very highlighted in the Leo horoscope chart. So teaching, learning, traveling, and spiritual growth, spiritual expansion, and also reflecting on our belief systems and whether or not we feel like we're living a life that's in alignment with those belief systems, and whether or not we feel like we're ready to expand or grow into some new areas around our belief systems, or spiritual life, or even academic beliefs, things like that. So that's been very highlighted in March as well as the beginning of April. So if those are themes that are happening for you in your life right now as a Leo sun or rising, that's why. Another thing that we started out the month of April with is Venus in Taurus, and that's been happening in the area of career for the Leo horoscope. And Venus passing through an area of career is great. It's great for getting a promotion or a raise. It's great for getting recognition at work. It's great for being kind of in a place where you're generating more income, or if you're self-employed and you have clients, generating more clients or business, all of that stuff. So that's been really enhanced. Venus has been in this area of the Leo horoscope since the middle of March, and she's going to actually be leaving this area in a couple days from today when I'm talking. So on the 11th, she'll be entering Gemini, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Mars is currently in Cancer, and the area that's impacting for the Leo horoscope has to do with our relationship to our subconscious and kind of things that we're working through from the past or in a deeper way. And then we have Jupiter still in Aries for the month of April. So Jupiter is going to be making its way from 19 to 26 degrees of Aries for the whole month. And again, really positive energy for Leo. Fire likes fire. Aries and Leo make a trine. So the need to grow and expand and kind of level up in life is very enhanced right now for Leo dominant people. Saturn entered Pisces last month, and we're going to have Saturn moving through 2 to 5 degrees of Pisces for the month of April. And the area that's hitting for the horoscope has to do with our assets and shared resources, sex, also death. Death and rebirth are the themes. We reflect on some of the past stuff too. There's definitely an element of reflecting on the past in the horoscope chart for Leo and working through maybe some wounds or healing around the past. Uranus is still in Taurus. Neptune is still in Pisces. Pluto is now in Aquarius. It entered Aquarius at the end of March. And that is the opposite sign of Leo. So those of us that have Leo in early degrees, which I don't know, well, I have one thing in early degree of Leo, but I'm a later degree Leo. But the Leos that have their placements, within the 0 to 5 degree kind of bubble are going to feel this Pluto energy more intensely than those of us that have Leo placements in the later degree. But we have a 20-year cycle with Pluto in Aquarius. And so we're going to be experiencing Pluto at the opposite of our sign for the next 20 years. And it's intense, it's Pluto is the death and rebirth planet, and all of us are going to experience this new wave of Pluto. But, when you have it opposite your sun energy or your rising energy, there's definitely tension and a whole kind of identity crisis or change, right? And so we have an opportunity to really go deep within ourselves and work through some things to level up. I mean, Pluto is also power, pain into power. So we might experience a lot of challenges over the next 20 years that will hopefully empower us in our lives to be better versions of ourselves, learn from things, in some challenging ways, but hopefully come out of it in 20 years on the other side, looking back and feeling like we're glad that we went through that. Fingers crossed. I know I can feel that I'm on the beginning of that. I've had Pluto making a hard aspect to my sun at the later degrees of Capricorn, which all Leos with later degrees of Leo sun energy or rising energy have had that in conjunct aspect. So Pluto's already been doing its thing on me and those of us with those later degrees. And it sucks. I have a lot of faith that it's moving me into a better place than I had hoped or had imagined, but I don't know. I like to wash myself into thinking those things because it makes me sleep better at night, but it's not been fun. So let's talk about where we're at today. So now that it's the 8th, we are, still working through some Aries energy in the chart. So again, belief systems and things like that come up, but Mercury has moved into Taurus. So Mercury is now at 7 degrees Taurus, and the area that is in is the career area. And so when Mercury is passing through a career area of a horoscope chart, it does enhance the communication, obviously, at our jobs or our work or whatever we're doing. It's also a really positive energy for networking. So Mercury in the house that rules like groups and friendships is also good for networking, but because Mercury is mercurial and rules communication and networking and those types of things anyways, if it's in a career area, it also enhances that. So having Venus and Mercury together in that area is really good for working on communication dynamics at work. Taurus rules money, so that there's ways that we need to work out financial stuff at work, that's also really enhanced right now. Mercury is also super practical and pragmatic. So if you need to have a more practical, pragmatic, grounded approach at work, or kind of be more steadfast and holding something down at work, that's also enhanced for the Leo horoscope, and it's a good time for that. Mercury is going to be in Taurus for the whole rest of April because it stations retrograde on the 21st. And so Mercury is going to be retrograde in the area of career for the Leo horoscope as well, which is very difficult. Obviously, lots of communication dynamics that are probably going to be really difficult and challenging, conflict, and a need to work those things out. Mercury is going to be retrograde until the 15th of May, and then it'll station direct and then finish its way through Taurus and enter into its home sign of Gemini in June. So we've got a long way to go with this Taurus career energy for the Leo horoscope. So again, there's going to be a lot of conflicting kind of communication dynamics that are probably going to be really challenging. But again, this is a time to reflect, review, and improve, so the way that I always try to look at communication conflict, even though it sucks and it's super frustrating and I wish that it just didn't happen ever, is just an opportunity for us to learn how to do things better or differently next time. Everybody communicates differently. And so sometimes if we're in a job where, communication is a big part of our job, which I think in most jobs it is, for a lot of Leo people, even if you're like somebody that works on a craft where you don't really work with anybody else, if you're selling those things, you have to communicate with customers or you have to use tech, like Mercury rules tech kind of communication too, like computers and phones and stuff like that. And so, if we're dealing with challenges around those things, it's also a good opportunity for us to work on systems or plans that are more efficient for us in getting those things done better next time. Sometimes it just sucks too. I mean, the bureaucracy stuff that can go wrong during a Mercury retrograde, you could do everything right and it could still go wrong. And it doesn't really feel like there's any lesson to be learned other than the fact that things just suck sometimes, you just have to deal with it. So there's that side of it too. I'm speaking from experience here with that one, where I'm just like, wow, I've done everything right on my end in terms of filling this form out and getting it to the right people. And yet I can't control whether or not the other people do their job. And I can't control whether the computer processes something in the right way. Right. So sometimes things just happen and we just have to deal with it. And it's just frustrating. And it doesn't really feel like there's a lesson to be learned other than just being patient and not letting things emotionally affect us and working on detachment and things like that. So those are themes that are most likely going to come up. Mercury in Taurus has a lot to do with money, and it's tax season. So those are things that are definitely good for you to get in order. As a Leo sun or rising, I'm definitely not as together in that way as I normally am. And it's just annoying to me that we have Mercury retrograde in Taurus right at the end of tax season, because I feel like it's going to impact. I feel personally attacked by bureaucracy right now, so I'm not looking forward to it. I'm a Leo and this is Leo horoscope, so it's hard for me to not look at this and go, and Taurus, another thing that's important to note about Taurus, it's fixed earth energy that squares Leo. It squares us, which is tension, hard, it's frustrating, it's not an easy flow. And so that square, if you have anything that is 15 through, it looks like 5 degrees of Taurus, that Mercury retrograde is going to be making that direct square. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. If your Leo placements are 15 to 5 degrees of Taurus, the Mercury retrograde is going to be making a square, an exact square at some point through its retrograde, which is hard. So it'll impact you more directly. It's going to impact all of us, but that tension will be more direct for you, which is not fun. So patience, Taurus is slow and patient. And that's the lesson here probably, is that we have to learn how to be patient. All good things take time. It's like you plant a seed and you got to water it. You got to tend to it. You have to nurture it, in order for it to grow into this big, healthy plant. It doesn't just happen like that. And fire signs can be really impatient. Like we want things to happen when we want them to happen. And Taurus, knows that it takes time. It takes work. It takes, putting a solid foundation in to really see the fruits of the labor. So there's a lot around patience for Leo in the work sector that's going to be brought up. Venus will enter Gemini on the 11th. So in a couple days, we'll have Venus in Gemini, which I'm really excited about. Venus is Venus is the esoteric ruler of Gemini. It's a really positive placement. And the Leo horoscope, this actually is really great for connecting with our community, networking, being involved with groups of friends, doing things with groups of friends. And so we're going to feel a need to connect with people in the month of April. And even if we don't necessarily go and seek it, it might just be coming to us. There might just be people coming out of the woodwork being like, I want to hang out with you. I want to connect with you. Hey, you want to go do this? That's already true for me for April. I feel like April is probably going to be one of the busiest social months I've had in a while. So that's something that may be happening for you in the month of April. That day that Venus on the 11th is trining, that day that Venus enters Gemini, it's going to be making a trine to Pluto in Aquarius. And so, again, there's this opposite energy that Pluto has. I'm about to sneeze, sorry. Okay, I think I caught it. I think I caught the sneeze. So we have the Pluto and Aquarius opposite Leo, and that's influencing the area of relationship and partnership, and then making a trine to our community, friendship kind of circles. And trines are positive. Usually it's like easy flowing energy. But, Pluto has a lot to do with death and rebirth and transformation. And so we might be feeling like we're ready to transform some of the energy around the community that we associate ourselves with, or the friendships or the groups, things like that. It's different for everybody what that will bring. Like it might make you kind of feel like you want to be closer to some people and it's not happening the way that you want it to. And so you might need to change or evolve your thinking around it. or the way that you thought you were going to be a part of a group or your community is changing or evolving in some way. And it should be for the better with Venus involved, but it still could be, you know, challenging with Pluto being a part of it. So that we'll feel that energy for a couple days around the 11th. And then another transit that we're having, I guess we already had it, was at the beginning of the month. Mars and Saturn made a trine in the water sign. So let's talk about Mars. Mars is in Cancer, and the area of the chart that's hitting for Leo horoscope is the area of the subconscious. A lot of people have stuff passing through this subconscious area right now, but Mars through this area is really challenging. It brings up pain or repressed trauma up to the surface from the subconscious. So like old wounds from the past, or even like a lot of, if you believe in past lives, it said that like past life trauma could be impacting your subconscious, and it's something that is beneficial for you to work on. And so people that also have Mars passing through this area might be dealing with repressed anger that hasn't been properly healed or worked through. And so that's a theme that could be happening for April and the beginning of May, when Mars is still passing through Cancer, where we feel this kind of, you know, need to work through these deep things that maybe we've been neglecting or not working through, or there's another layer, like a new layer of the onion of the healing that needs to happen. This feels really relevant in my life, especially with my Leo rising husband. I feel like we're both having a lot of this stuff getting triggered right now, and we're talking about it, working through it, you know, and like kind of going deep into the areas that we've been repressing just to get by. You know, I think a lot of us repress things not on purpose, but because we know we can't just sit around and cry all day, you know, and I don't want to sit around and talk about my trauma all day or write about my trauma all day. You know, a lot of people recommend certain journaling exercises for that stuff, and it actually really upsets me. I don't really like journaling that much right now, just because I just find myself complaining a lot, and it's not helpful for me. I think that there's a time and a place for us to do that though. And so if you're somebody where you're feeling like journaling and expressing and talking about that stuff in that written form is really constructive and getting that stuff out, I would say do that. You know, if you're somebody where you've done a lot of that, like I'm somebody where I've spent a lot of time talking about, reflecting, writing about my trauma, trying to somatically work through it and heal it. And I'm a process talker. Like I have to emotionally talk about things in order to work through them. And there's a time when that's really constructive for me, and there's a time when it's just not. And I need to just actually start doing things that bring me joy. I feel like I'm very much in a joy, like I need to be in a joy place right now. So I'm doing more artistic, creative projects that get my brain into a flow state of experiencing happiness, rather than sitting and trying to dissect all of the things in my life that are, you know, contributing to certain ideologies now. Like I've done so much of that, and there's always a time and a place for it. I mean, I would say that I have a few days every month where I need to sit with myself and do that, but it's not something that's beneficial to me to do all the time. So those are things to kind of reflect on when Mars is passing through this area of the subconscious as things come up. And for people in recovery, you know, like me and my husband, when these things come up from the past, if you have a history of using substances to cope with it, it's really triggering, you know, because you might feel like you want to regress a bit back into a place where you do that. And you have to have a conversation with yourself, you know, reminding yourself that the reason why you're still here, the reason why your life is good, or at least better, is because you don't use those coping mechanisms anymore. And so sometimes just a reminder, you know, of like, okay, but think back to when you felt this way. Like drinking didn't actually make you feel better. It made you feel worse in many ways, you know. Like I had a conversation with my husband where we were reflecting on how we used alcohol to cope with some of these painful times in our life. And it's like, yeah, but you know, we had anxiety. Like it wasn't fun. We weren't like using alcohol to cope with it and then being like, wasn't that so fun and great? You know, it was like we were using alcohol to cope with it, and it was just putting us deeper into it, into the depression. And it was making us have more anxiety for a longer stretch of time. Right. And so having those memories of, you know, obviously I have memories of drinking where it was fun, but you know, that was when I was drinking to have fun, not drinking to cope with negative things. Whenever I drank to cope with negative things, it just put me into a deeper negative spiral. So those are things that, you know, might be helpful to people in recovery watching this, where if you get any, you know, painful memories from your past that give you this inkling to want to go to something unhealthy, just reminding yourself that when you did that, it wasn't like, there's a reason why it brought you into sobriety, right? There's a reason why you had a wake up call that was like, I don't want to do this. And, you know, Mars making that trine to Saturn at the beginning of the month might have triggered some of that stuff. And so walking through all of those things and having a spiritual practice and more, you know, grounding spiritual modalities that help you kind of work through those things is really beneficial, especially for the month of April, while Mars and Saturn are both in water signs like Cancer and Pisces. So at the I guess I talked about most of the things that we should talk about. So I'll just talk about our lunar phases. So we had a full moon in Libra on the 6th at 16 degrees Libra. Let me double check, make sure I said all that right. And the area that this was hitting for Leo, Libra and Leo get along really well, and Aries and Leo get along really well. And so the Aries Libra axis is actually really positive energy for Leo, because Libra makes a sextile to Leo and Aries makes a trine to Leo. So there's a lot of like really good energy, good vibe energy with a full moon in Libra. And the area that it was hitting again for the Leo horoscope was the area around our belief systems and also how we communicate. And, you know, Libra wants harmonious communication, but Libra can also avoid conflict or be passive in a way that creates more problems. And so a lot of times the lesson for Libra is knowing how to have harmonious conflict that's not passive aggressive or what's the other word I'm looking for? Conflict avoidant, I guess. So for Leo, like kind of having the full moon highlighted in the communication, there might have been some themes around learning how to communicate in a way that's more harmonious. And, you know, maybe there's still some assertion or some need to confront something, but it needs to be done in a way that is more balanced and grounded. And, you know, Aries and Libra aren't very grounded signs, but they can be more linear at times. Libra, not so much, but Aries. And so there's kind of this ability with the Aries Libra to see both sides of a situation and come to a good, straightforward conclusion while respecting both perspectives. And the area that that's hitting kind of has to do with those things. And, you know, also touching on those belief systems and ideologies again. And, you know, full moons are a great time to call things in, let things go. So if, ooh, I feel sneeze again. Ooh, ooh. Spring in the desert, man, it's just, my sinuses do not like it. So there's, you know, an ability to kind of reflect on communication dynamics that you might want to grow past, evolve, or change, or, you know, letting go of certain communication dynamics that aren't serving you anymore is a good theme. There's a lot of stuff. It's just funny. Like, I mean, obviously I'm projecting into my own stuff, looking at it in the chart, but it's just so relevant for the conversations I've had the last few days in my own life. A lot of this stuff, I don't really pay that much attention to my own chart or the horoscopes until I'm doing them. So whenever things are just super relevant and accurate, it makes me laugh, just because it's just astrology. It's just entertaining. So Taurus season is going to come on the 20th. So we're already having this Mercury Taurus energy with a little bit of Venus Taurus energy right now. And then we're going to fully enter Taurus season on the 20th. And we're going to have a solar eclipse in Aries at 29 degrees that day, which is a pretty big deal. So there might be belief systems, you know, that you feel like you're ready to move on from during the solar eclipse. There's going to be a big shift of energy happening with how we used to identify with certain values and belief systems for where it's hitting in the horoscope. And then we might just be kind of over it. And it's interesting because, like, if I speak anecdotally in terms of what's been happening in my life with certain things, if you were to ask me like 8 years ago how I felt about spirituality, you know, I mean, I guess I'll say 9 years ago, if we were to look at it 9 years ago, which is, yeah. I was really borderline atheist. Like I considered myself agnostic, but I was like pretty negative outlook on spirituality because I had gone through a period of my life being raised in a very esoteric, metaphysical, spiritual way. And then I went through, I would say, kind of like a dark period where I was ravaged by life early in my early adult, late teen life in a way that really made me lose a lot of faith. And I had just a lot of skepticism around everything, even, even science, like even things that were more factual, but it was just still like, I just felt very not trusting of a lot of things. And when I had like my second spiritual awakening, I would say, and I was kind of brought back into a lot of the spiritual esoteric stuff, I just let myself let go of all of my preconceived judgments, and I just leaned into it. I was like, I'm just not going to come at this judgmentally. I'm not going to judge. I mean, I still have judgments about some religious stuff, obviously, because of just history, we know. But when it came to, like witchcraft and astrology and tarot and different ideologies and mysticism, I just wanted to absorb it. I'm Sag rising. It's a very Sagittarius ninth house kind of thing. I just wanted to absorb it and learn about it and be open-minded and not project my judgment, and remain as discerning as possible through that process, and just see it as a fun exploration, right? And it was super fun, very empowering. And then the dark side of that came back into my life through other people, which is the first time that happened to me, was what made me not want to be involved in any of this stuff. And I've been spending the last few years healing and trying to come out of that, and trying to reestablish my relationship with my spirituality and with wellness circles in a way that is more in alignment with the discernment and skepticism that I have. And there's a lot that I'm open-minded to, but there's also a lot that I'm just like, no, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not buying the snake oil here, And so I feel like only I myself can make that judgment. There's a lot of things that I am open to believing are possible, and I don't share them with people because it's crazy. It's like a crazy thing that I'm open-minded towards, But I think that there's a difference between playing around with the possibility of things and then acting like certain things are factually true and claiming to be a master of that knowledge. That's very troublesome to me. And people might say that astrology is one of those things, and I feel like I have enough research as a baby astrologer that to me makes like astrology feels more like a science to me. I know people call it a pseudoscience, but there's something to it for sure. And it's very odd. And I'm open to it all being bullshit, but it doesn't change the fact that it continues to be highly relevant and accurate in my life, no matter what, So I think that it's obviously to each their own. But I think that, if you had asked me 9 years ago what my perspective was, it would have been one way. If you asked me, 5 years ago what my perspective was, it would have been one way. And if you ask me today, there's a lot of things that I was more open about 5 years ago that I'm starting to be less open about now, based off of experience, right? Not based off of what I've read in books or what may be true or not true. It's based off of what my life experience has shown me. And I'm very protective and skeptical over a lot of stuff right now, especially in wellness circles and wellness communities, whether it's spiritual or actually health focused. And I feel like I've always been that way. I don't feel like that's new, but I feel like I'm not as open to going and trying all these things as I was 4 or 5 years ago, just because I've done it. And I don't think that there's some things that have worked for me that I continue to do. And there's some things that I feel like are kind of, probably a trend or something, right? So, I think that for me, the exploration chapter feels a little closed, and that feels relevant to me with this solar eclipse because it's a 29-degree solar eclipse. It's ending in the house that has to do with exploration and beliefs. That's, for me, might be different for another Leo individual. You might feel like you're ready to go and explore something else. Like maybe you've been in one little pocket you've been playing around with, and maybe you're over it and it's time to move on. Or maybe you're revisiting something that you spent a lot of time with that you kind of haven't been in for a while, and now you're diving back into it. So it's different for us all, but those are kind of themes around this eclipse for Leo horoscope. The other thing that happens after this eclipse at 29 degrees Aries is that the sun and moon moved straight into Taurus afterwards. And so we have this kind of like Taurus new moon energy. That's also really positive for setting intentions around things that we want to call into the physical. And again, the Taurus energy in the horoscope has to do with career. And so it's a very, you know, positive time for you to be thinking about the intentions you want to set in the work that you're doing in the world. And then Mercury stations retrograde right after that. So whoopee for us. I'm not super excited, obviously, about our Mercury retrograde. That is your horoscope, Leo, for the month of April. Good luck to us. Let's soak in the Aries sun as long as we can, right? Luckily, Jupiter will be there the rest of the month. All right, I'll see you guys next month.